I'm back. I'm Lara Williams. This is Sonographers After Dark, and today I'm joined by Doug Richardson. Doug, welcome. How are you?
Oh, appreciate it. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So, I know you and I connected. I don't even know. It's been a long time ago. I seem to vaguely recall that I think Michelle Burig introduced us at an ASD
Yeah.
like forever ago, right? So, yeah, so we've kind of been connected here and there, LinkedIn, and I've seen you've gotten some new achievements. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So once again, I appreciate you having me on your platform. And
Yeah.
you've done a lot within the ultrasound community, from accreditation to education, and utilizing your creativity and your entrepreneurial spirit. So I just wanted to give you your flowers while I'm on the platform as well.
Yeah.
Um, But in regard to my recent achievement, I just achieved FACHI, which is the fellow of the American College of Healthcare Executives credential. So it's a credential where you have to meet certain criterias as far as experience in healthcare management, as well as volunteer activities and a certain amount of educational requirements before you can apply and take the exam. So it's a very arduous process, to say
Sounds
the
like
least,
it.
but I'm happy to have successfully passed, and hopefully I can use the knowledge to better our organization.
Yeah. So the institution where you're at now, you function in kind of a directorship role, and you just told me that you kind of transitioned into a whole leadership strategy role. So,
Yeah,
you are a sonographer, right? I mean, that's your background, but
correct.
you have really excelled within the organization that you're at and found a pathway to leadership that I think, a lot of sonographers kind of don't know how to get there. So let's talk about what that journey looked like, because it's not a quick path, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it takes a
Yeah,
while.
so I can go back to the beginning, just how I got into ultrasound. So I started off, I'm born and raised Charleston, South Carolina, and I started off as an undeclared major. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and still living with my parents. I'm like, I got to figure out something. So after my first semester, I was like, I just got to go to a new city, pick a major, start my life off as a young adult, and get everything in order. So I decided to apply for the University of South Carolina, which is about an hour away from Charleston. And I went through the catalog for majors, and I just so happened to run into cardiovascular technology. And I didn't quite know what it was. I was like,
Like, look, me do this.
cardiovascular
Yeah.
technology sounds like the future, so let's do it,
Yeah.
right? So,
Right.
so I selected the major. I got accepted, and then I moved to Columbia, and from then, took all the science courses, went through the calculus, and all those courses, still not knowing what I was getting myself into, right? So,
You had no clue, right?
no, not at
Yeah.
all. So it wasn't until I completed everything, and then I got to the point of my internship, and I got to shadow a sonographer before I got accepted and applied. So, and I was like, I get to push an arcade machine around and deal with patients. So it sounds like a pretty exciting field, right? So I went through internship. Everything was successful, and worked a couple of years in South Carolina, and then I got my first uh, supervisory position up in Illinois. So, and that was within 2 years of me being in the field.
Okay.
And that
You
was
sound
one of
like
the most,
me, like you always end up in supervisory roles. My
right.
whole life, like I worked at McDonald's when I was 18 and I ended up being a
Oh,
manager like 3 months
wow.
in. Like, what
Yeah.
is this?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah,
I guess leadership just calls you sometimes, right?
I
So,
guess. Yeah.
yeah. So that was when I took that role. That was in rural Illinois, so resources were slim, and this is my first leadership experience. So that was one of the hardest years
That's
professionally in my
hard.
life, like
Yeah.
trying to figure out myself as well as figuring out how to manage other people. But nonetheless, that things went well regardless of the times. And then I got promoted to managing multiple departments, echovascular as well as general ultrasound for two hospitals and the imaging center. as well as assisting the director with some of the other diagnostic imaging departments as well. So at that point, my director was like, you should really consider the Masters of Healthcare Administration program, because that way you can try to tie in the clinical and the operation business component, and then merge your knowledge together to make improvements. Um, so I then
That's the
applied.
hardest part for
Yeah, it's
stenographers
hard. It's
who
hard.
get into leadership is that they know clinical, but they don't know business. And there's a lot of business that has to go into leading in healthcare. And
Right,
then they don't know the administrative side of healthcare. So then having
right,
to put the whole piece together is sometimes challenging
right.
for stenographers who are just clinical in nature.
Right, because we might want all the latest technology and whatnot, but from a business perspective, you have to really justify it, right? Um, so from that point, I entered, the MHA program for the University of Missouri, and during that time, I accepted a role as a supervisor in Florida, near Jacksonville, Florida. So during that time, I was, completing my master's degree program and still, leading in a different capacity. At that time, I was over ultrasound as well as EKG and EEG. So
In
in a
there.
different capacity, yeah. So,
Yeah, done that.
so yeah, so
Yep.
that was pretty interesting. But after I completed my MHA program, shortly after, I saw the opportunity for a performance improvement consultant role at my current organization. And a funny story, I went through the interview process there and got the role, right? And I went back home and told my wife, my now wife, and told her I got the role. And she was like, "Yeah, we know what is it that you're going to be doing?" And I'm like, "I'm going to be responsible for accrediting, 7 hospitals, right?" And she said, "7 hospitals?" And I was like, "Oh man, 7 hospitals!" It just hit me like seven,
Yeah,
seven
it hit
hospitals,
you.
not one but seven, right? So I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
what am I getting myself into?
Hey,
But you eat an elephant one bite at a time, and you
yep.
just start off by assessing the situation, and all the sonographers, the leaders, the educators, providers, they've been wonderful, and I believe it was within 2 years we got accredited. So it's been quite a journey, but it was quite enjoyable as well. Yeah.
Yeah. 7 hospitals is a large ask as far as accreditation goes, because and I know the system you're at very well, which I trained there.
Yeah.
So yeah. Um and it's just that you have so much involved with the leaders at different places. I worked for an organization that had 5 hospitals and got them accredited and all, and then you're dealing with everything from adult to vascular to pediatrics to, so
Right.
and everything in between. And I don't know what your kind of responsibilities covered as far as accreditation, but when you deal with so many different aspects of it can be hard to just get it all under control,
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
My
lot of
wheel.
data that you're dealing
Yeah. A
with.
lot of data, a lot of information to go through, and then figuring out how that data is best useful, right? And then figuring out how to uh, persuade those who are opposed to change, right? So a lot of change management is involved. So you have to really utilize what you call ethical persuasion to try to get everybody on board, right?
Yeah.
So there are multiple
That
steps
is probably the
involved.
hardest part. I think the hardest part for me, because I did accreditation consulting full time for like a decade
Yeah,
before I stepped into a role at a hospital organization with it. And the hardest part for me was always working with the physicians to get the reports to be
yeah,
lined up correctly. And I think that with the advent of, PAC systems and structured reporting, that has really been more simplified than it was when I was first started doing accreditation. But yeah, I mean that's hard sometimes is just getting everybody on the same page.
right. I told myself if all else failed, I'm going to call Lara, Lara, so see if I could get some help, so
Hey, happy to help. But yeah.
Yeah.
And then how do you do, because ultimately one of the things that I struggled with was, doing accreditation. I got a lot of customers who wanted to be accredited, but they really didn't want to change. They really didn't want to adapt, to really bringing their standards higher within the lab as far as quality. And that
Right.
for me was a big struggle as a consultant. When you are hired at the organization, I think that is a little bit different and they really do want that, or they wouldn't have created a role for you like that.
Right.
But coming as an outside consultant, for me, I really struggled with that because I kind of had to, I had this line I had to draw where I started only bringing on customers who were willing to really adopt a quality program, because
Right.
that's what it's really about in the long run. Accreditation isn't just to have standards, and yes, those minimums should be met, but ultimately it's about bringing quality to our exams for our patients, right? And
Right.
so that was kind of for me the like, okay, I can't do this anymore if all you want is accreditation. I need to be able to build quality programs for you.
Right.
And
Right.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a challenge though when you have a
Yeah.
lot of staff.
Right.
So when you have upwards of 50, 60, 70 plus sonographers that you're working with, how do you build a quality program when you're number one spread out across geographical, territories that are fairly far apart, and then also just different management styles, et cetera, that you're working with too?
Right. Yeah, I mean the first I would say the first year was just getting to know the staff, like traveling to all the hospitals, talking to as many sonographers as possible, having them get to know me as a person because no one wants somebody from the outside just coming in and saying, "Hey, you're doing this wrong. We need to change this," right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think just getting, forming that relationship with the staff as well as the managers and directors was very important, right? You have to show that you're competent and that you have their best interests. So for the first year, that was the main focus, as well as, just doing some back reads and observing the cases and kind of seeing where the areas of opportunities were. And then after that year, that's when you start implementing quality improvement suggestions and quality improvement plans, plans of action, because at that point you gain the trust of everybody. So that was the main driver. And then from that point, I'm like, okay, if we're having our quarterly meetings, how am I going to get 100 plus sonographers all
Yeah.
to participate in the meeting? So from that point, we started looking into a internal, virtual infrastructure or platform where all sonographers can log in live and view the meeting and also record the meeting and post it in a centralized hub or location, so that they all can have a chance to review the meeting, as well as kind of like a social media type platform where they can still type in their own questions and feedback so that their voice is heard and they're participating as well. So,
Yeah.
so like you having that creative entrepreneurial spirit, trying to think outside the
Yeah.
box, having that first principles thinking, what can I do that's different that'll work, and that seemed to be successful.
Nice. Yeah, I've seen that kind of implemented in a couple different organizations, something similar to that. And I think that's really helpful because it engages people where they're at, but yet, because it's really hard if you have that many people to get everybody on site at one time,
Right.
it can be very challenging.
Well,
So,
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure
I
that the hospital had to invest in their IT team to be able to get that to work. So,
yeah,
you also
yeah,
then need buy-in from
right.
admin for that too, right?
Right, correct, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of stakeholders from management to the providers, they were all in and wanting to improve the quality of our echoes. So a lot of investments, and it has paid off in the long run.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. For me, so because, I was working as a consultant and I was managing labs across from New York to Hawaii, right? So I had to build a software to do it.
yeah,
And that's what I did. I built a
Yeah.
software and I actually just started remarketing that software. So
Wow.
as a kind of a standalone tool. So
Yeah.
yeah. But that's
I
the only
think,
way I could function. Otherwise I would have gone crazy and pulled my hair out
yeah,
probably. So
it's definitely a good time to have that because, we now have an influx of young emerging sonographers. So just to have those additional resources, especially with the updates and the standards and guidelines with, diastolic function and,
yeah.
so I think, having as many tools as possible is definitely going to be
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah, I mean, there's so change. I think last year the ASC put out like 4 or 5 guidelines.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hold on, I can't keep
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's great because it gives us some framework and structure to build upon, but
Right.
to actually go through it all and then apply it all can sometimes be challenging, especially for a new sonographer. So,
Right.
what does that look like for you bringing on new sonographers? I know you have an organization that has a college associated with it. So, you kind of have some built in pipeline of sonographers coming your way, I'm sure.
Right.
But how do you train those new sonographers to adapt to your protocols to kind of bring them into the quality process?
Yes. So fortunately, we have some phenomenal educators within our system. Brenda Leon, she's one of our educators who's taken on that responsibility for the entire Central Florida Division. So she's responsible for the competencies and the oversight to ensure that sonographers are up to date with the latest protocols and whatnot, as well as Rick Morrow, who has been with Advent Health, I want to say 40 something years, give or take. So we call him the Yoda of Echo. So he's a wealth of knowledge to pick his brain, as well as our management, and we have seasoned sonographers who contribute to ongoing education as well. So it's a team of people involved, especially with such a large system.
Yeah.
You have to have all hands on deck, and then empowering the sonographers to, you know, invest in their growth. We implemented clinical pathways for them as well, kind of modeling the ASC recommendations for that, and that provided some additional growth opportunities and incentives for them to continue growing individually as well. So.
Yeah. I think when sonographers feel like they have a method of growth, because otherwise they're kind of stuck in one role and they have no opportunity to really expand. And then it leads to them maybe not having satisfaction in their role, right? So I think having those clinical pathways is wise from multiple ways. It gives a clear structure of, ladder, clinical ladder. And then it also, like you said, incentivizes them to just invest in their own growth and their own skills. So
Right. Because not everyone wants to be a manager, right? So there has to
yeah.
be some additional incentives for them to, keep their interest, especially if they've been doing it for a long time. So,
Me, I've taken per diem roles in the past and then been put into management like 3 weeks in, and I'm like, I
yeah.
didn't want this. Like I said, somehow always end up like
Yeah.
as a leader, manager, supervisor, whatever,
Yeah.
which is fine. I get it. But
Yeah.
sometimes I just want to scan,
Yeah. Like I
you know?
said, it's a calling for you, I guess,
I guess. I don't know.
So.
Yeah, no, sometimes I just want to scan. That's it. So, and that's okay. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that,
It is
right?
okay.
So, as far as accreditation and some of the changes, obviously they're bringing HOCM in as an opportunity for accreditation. So that's kind of a new thing. I just had a podcast that was sponsored by the ASE with support from Bristol Myers Squibb that talked about goal-directed Valsalva. So is that something, just out of curiosity, that you have all adopted within your labs yet?
So as far as the accreditation, we haven't discussed that particular accreditation yet. We do have a HOCM program. So where the stenographers are heavily involved in that process. And once again, our educator ensures that the protocols are being adhered. As far as the accreditation, we haven't, you know, march
It's not
toward.
available yet. So it's
Right.
still in process. So you
Right.
have a little bit of time to decide on that
Okay.
for Hokum.
Yeah.
But so as far as the accreditation challenges that maybe you have faced, let's talk about some of those, like some of the biggest challenges to get an organization like that accredited.
Um, I think having at the time 7 hospitals, 7 different personalities, 7 different leaders, opinions, just getting everyone on board with improving quality. And once again, as an accreditation manager, you're not their direct manager, right? You're more of a consultant
Right.
in that sense. So,
Mhm.
having to talk in the way or, provide the suggestions in the way that's convincing, right? That this is at the end of the day, these changes are for the patient. So I think that was one of the biggest challenges. And of course, when it comes to, the development of protocols and changing protocols and policies, there's different opinions that goes along with that too. So I think just, the alignment in the beginning was one of the challenges, but once we got there, then it got a lot easier, but you have to get over that hurdle first. So yeah,
Well, I'm grateful you got over that hurdle. My parents receive care at those facilities. So
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
grateful for that because I know that they're in good hands, right?
Oh yeah,
So, you
yeah,
know, it's a good thing to know that the organizations that people that I am, that I love and care about are receiving the best care that they can, right?
right,
Because
yeah.
ultimately that's what matters. And so I do think that, not that sonographers are opinionated at all ever.
I don't
But
know.
we can be really opinionated on the way we
Right,
learn things, and everybody learn differently.
right,
And so I don't think it's that any one person necessarily wants, you know, thinks that they're better than someone else. It's just a matter of this is how I learn and I think this might be better. And so then you always have differences of opinions. And so,
right,
bringing those being the bridge is kind of what you have to be in a role
right,
like that to bridge
right,
physicians and sonographers, to bridge invasive and non-invasive, to bridge admin and clinical, and it's really this role that is so relationship heavy. And I
right,
think that that's probably if I can share that with anybody walking into an accreditation quality type of role, is that you have to be a bridge person that brings bridges to gaps that are there in communication, because that's really what it boils down to.
absolutely. Yeah,
um, and I think
absolutely.
if you can figure that part of it out, you'll
Right,
probably be able to figure out the rest fairly easily.
right. Yeah,
Checking
yeah,
the boxes for accreditation isn't hard if you can bridge the communication that you need with
right.
people.
Right. I mean, emotional intelligence is very important, right? And you're going to be dealing with physicians, management, different
Mhm.
personalities. So you have to be able to regulate your emotions as well and understand that you're working for the bigger cause.
Right.
So it's definitely crucial. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
So, what advice do you have for sonographers who, are looking to maybe get into either a leadership role or a quality type of role?
I mean, I'll start off by saying that, to be a leader, you don't really have to have a title, first of all. You can start off right where you are now, right? In the department, working on accreditation initiatives, trying to improve the workflow within your department, right? Working with your lead supervisor, seeing where the areas of opportunities are that you can assist with, right? Um, then from that point, I would suggest figuring out what exactly you want to do. Do you want to move up the traditional ladder, being a supervisor, manager, possibly even director route, or do you want to be an educator? Do you want to be on the technology side? Because as sonographers, we love the technical aspect of healthcare, and as you move up the ladder, you're going to be handling patient care in a different way. You're not going to be as direct, so you have to figure out whether that's something you want to do or whether you enjoy that patient care, right? And then last of all, seek mentorship or sponsorship. And it could be your manager, or you can attend networking. You can network at ASC events,
Yeah.
SDMS events, and there's an influx of phenomenal sonographers and leaders within the industry that you can reach out to. It's a lot of people, but it's a small community, right? So reaching out to somebody and kind of getting their insights in the field and then determine whether it's a route that you want to go. And I'll even say a step further and participate in ACHE, American College of Healthcare Executive events, because there you'll see a lot of directors, a lot of C-suites, individuals, and these networking events, and you can, introduce yourself and mingle with them as well. So those would be my suggestions.
Yeah, I think those are all good. The ACHE is not something I've ever really invested any time or effort into, honestly.
Yeah,
So, that's new for me. So I'm gonna explore that a little bit further.
yeah, yeah. I mean, as
Obviously,
sonographers,
it's an
yeah,
esteemed credential that you have, right?
yeah.
So, and took a lot of work to get that.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
for the longest, I wasn't quite sure what it was either, and I feel like, well, I see a lot of these, directors and high-level executives with these credentials. So I started to do my research, and it's definitely beneficial once you get into it. You understand the whole different side of healthcare that puts all the pieces together. So I found that very interesting. Yeah.
I think as far as for echo sonographers, the ASE is, hands down the organization you need to invest
Yeah.
in as far as your own personal growth, networking as well. And they offer mentorship, right? So there is the ASE mentorship for people that maybe need some extra insight or extra hand holding or whatever that looks like, right? But there's so many opportunities to just grow your own understanding and your own network within the ASE too. I said I was talking again with on my one of my previous podcasts, and I was like, in the day that we live in now, with so much access, you don't have an excuse to not learn something too, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
like if you don't know something, there's no excuses. You go learn it,
Right.
right? Like the ASE provides that opportunity. But also, I say, I can say the same thing about creating opportunities for yourself to grow in leadership. The
Right.
opportunities are there. You just have to make yourself available to them, you
Right,
know?
right, for
So
sure.
it's
I
about
mean,
your own effort.
yeah, so many different organizations to participate and be involved with. I mean, you have YouTube with
Yeah.
a whole lot of information. So there's lots of resources that you can dive into to improve yourself professionally for sure. Yeah.
What do you think about some of the new AI advancements that we're seeing in Echo? What's your opinion on that moving forward?
Um, I think as far as AI, it's not going to take over everything as far
What?
as the sonographers duties, responsibilities. It's going to be more of a helper. Um, I think as far as accreditation, at some point, it's going to move from kind of that retrospective checklist process to a more data-driven, real-time, automation type of process. Even as of now, within our EHR at my current organization, right, you log in and you do a search, and there's a dashboard, IEC dashboard with everything you need as far as the data right there at your fingertips. Um, and then we're seeing the software now, that automates all the measurements for you and develops the structure report for
Yep.
you. So at some
And you don't
point,
have to do anything. You just plug it in
yeah,
and
plug it
scan.
in and it's
Yeah.
all done, right? So
Amazing.
so I think when everything is integrated together and the language learning model begins to mature, I think it's going to be great for an echo lab that maybe doesn't have a dedicated educator or accreditation manager, and that way they can just view the data and then have someone assigned to come up with an action plan to improve the lab. So I think it's going to be great for the future for sonographers when it comes to AI. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of apprehension around it. Sonographers are afraid that it's either number one going to take their jobs. I think that fear is probably less and less and less. But I do think that they're afraid that it's going to improve their time so much that they end up with more patients. And I think that might be a reality.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there's an off spin to that, right? Like, so then they're scanning more. So does that make it worse for musculoskeletal workplace disorders? Or, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, well, I mean, overall, I think that's why there's a great opportunity, especially in this time in healthcare, for sonographers to kind of evaluate and educate themselves more on the business side, whether it's going back and getting the master's degree in healthcare administration. I know a lot of sonographers have done that, but seeking further advancement in the leadership side of things, because I mean, there's a lot of opportunity to provide that sonographer perspective that's really critical right now, because imaging is the cornerstone
Mm.
right now of healthcare, especially with the changes in healthcare, value-based care. One of the first places a patient will go is to have an imaging ultrasound done. So having, more sonographers in that leadership role and able to look at things from that lens and be able to make meaningful changes that'll work for the lab as well as the organization is definitely an opportunity that's there.
Think there's opportunities with the AI companies too, right? So
For
there's
sure.
there's opportunities even there if you're an advanced sonographer to provide either consulting or, some type of just directory role to help, guide clinical usage and all of that as well. So I think
Yeah.
there's opportunities all around.
Correct.
We just have to take advantage of them, right?
Right. Exactly.
So
Exactly.
so the ACS credential, is that something that your labs have instituted as part of the clinical pathway?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we have. We have currently, I think we have maybe four ACS sonographers right
I can help
now.
you get more. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. We're working on getting more.
shameless plug. Yeah,
Yeah.
for my
Well,
ACS class.
we recently added that to the clinical couple years ago.
Yeah.
Um, but there's still lots of opportunities to gain that credential, but it's part of the ladder for sure. Yes.
So every organization kind of handles that credential a little differently as far as what their scope of practice is. I've heard some institutions allow them to manipulate TEE transducers, others do not, right? So that scope is highly variable across the US, really. Um, are you able to share what your ACS scope involves?
As of now, we haven't gotten that far with
Yeah.
DE.
And most have
Oh,
not.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we will. But right now, it's a point on the pathway, but we haven't gotten to the point where we have that high volume to figure out exactly what their roles and responsibilities would be other than, their typical sonographer duties and contributing to education. But I mean, we do have cardio strain champions. That's part of the clinical pathway. So we do have a lot of champions who's able to participate as a point of resource in a lot of our cardiovascular specialty programs. So maybe, in the future, maybe we can tie that ACS with that and some of those other cardiovascular specialty opportunities. But there's lots of opportunity, and every year we continuously reevaluate the clinical pathway and add or take away things. So it's a moving progress. So.
I think those roles are still trying to be figured out, and that's everywhere, not just where you're at. There's so much that can be done, but yet it's kind of like, okay, great, you're an ACS. Now what?
Right.
Right? Like,
Right.
yes, you contribute to education. And I think that's the biggest part of it, is education and leadership and roles like yours, like being, either a manager or quality manager, accreditation manager, things like that, that have been heavily put towards that ACS credential.
Right.
So
Right.
that's kind of what I've seen in the labs that I've talked to.
Yeah.
Um, so what's next for you now that you're transitioning to a new pathway, new role?
Yes. Yeah. I haven't announced it yet, but since we're all friends, you know, Yeah, so I'm now the director of strategy delivery for the Heart, Lung, and Vascular Institute. So basically, the bridge between strategy from the executive team and the operations team. So just making sure that the strategic initiatives are being delivered and accomplished. So that means developing the programs and the metrics that are needed to ensure that, the campuses are being held accountable for moving forward and completing the initiative. So definitely interesting, dynamic role, and I'm excited to start being part of that.
Okay, nice. Yeah, it sounds like it's like, where do you start?
Yeah,
Right?
no, I
Like
know,
that's
right?
a big responsibility. And how do you
Mhm.
communicate that? That's definitely going to be, I'm sure, challenging but rewarding.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That,
excited
that's
for
where
your
the
future.
process performance improvement thinking comes into play, and just look at it, one step at a time and go from there, one foot in front of the other, so to speak.
Yeah. Look at it like you took on 7 hospitals getting them accredited, right?
Right,
One
right,
step at a time. It's all you
right.
can do.
That's all you can do.
So, yeah. So any other advice to just, some of your newer sonographers, how they can kind of maybe not just at your facility, but any facility really, where how they can learn the best and really adapt to what's expected of them in a role, whether that be echo, vascular. Have you been over vascular as well or just over
Just
cardiac?
just just echo, just
Okay.
echo. Yes, but our new educator, she's over echo and vascular now. So
Okay.
so
So, what would you recommend to a sonographer who's just coming into an organization that has some pretty robust, scanning protocols in place, and how do they adapt and grow?
I would just start off by saying to give yourself some grace and understand that you're not going to learn everything in one day, but just stay curious and ask questions, and just never give up, and know that your goal and purpose is for the best patient care. And nothing great just happens overnight. So just continue to be persistent, continue to be curious, continuing to ask questions, and you'll get to where you want to be. You just have to be persistent. So
Good advice. Sorry, my dog is snoring in the background. I don't know
that's
if you can hear
okay.
him or
Yeah,
not.
I think I'm gonna sleep afterwards too. It's Friday too,
Yeah,
so that's not a
I
bad
get a
idea.
nap. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I will say my advice, which is again another shameless plug, is for new sonographers is my new app. So I'm so excited about it. It's app.iheartecho.com. It's really cool. And I mean it's good for ACS, is for more advanced people too, because it has guideline references. It breaks down like the accreditation guidelines for you, and you can just kind of click by subject and check it out.
Okay.
And then it also breaks down like calculators and all of that too. But then for newer people, it gives them like a protocol checklist that they can make sure that they're getting everything they need, and a side by side with images too. So it's kind of cool.
Okay.
So I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
It just launched last week. So it's building traction. So check it out,
Okay, for sure.
app.iheartecho.com. Let me know what you think. I'm curious to see what you think.
Oh, for sure. Definitely will do. Remember, we had to carry the Terry Reynolds book
Yeah.
back in
Well, now it's
right.
on your phone
Right. It's on your
at
phone now, right?
app.iheartecho.com.
Right. So definitely
Yeah.
want to check that out for sure.
Yes. So, okay, I had to give my shameless plug. Sorry
For
about that.
sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
So, well, it was good to see you, to talk to you. It's been good to kind of watch your career grow from afar. And so awesome work. Congratulations on all the success that you've had. And I'm excited for your new role.
Oh, I appreciate it. And let's not let this be the last time around. So
No, for sure. Yeah, I'm in Florida. Like I said, my parents they receive their care at DeLand, Florida
okay.
Hospital. I still call it Florida Hospital DeLand.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's hard to break, it is
Yeah,
hard.
I can't get the Florida Hospital out of my mind. Sorry. That's I went to school at Florida Hospital College of Health Sciences is what it was called back then
Right.
for ultrasound. So I'm Lara Williams, joined by Doug Richardson. This has been another episode of Sonographers After Dark.